What's in the box?
What's in the box? What's in the box?
As you can see, it's the new Korg Minilogue XD. I just got it, down with a little bit of a cold today, but this thing arrived in the mail. I'm super stoked. Box came a little damaged, but everything looks fine. Yeah, let's see what is in this thing. All right. Oh man. Cool. Got your little manual. Stuff you never read. Probably should, but you never do. That's why you watch these videos. Because I'm going to be doing a little tutorial here on this thing. All right. So what do we got here? This is the Korg Minilogue. It's pretty lightweight. Feels about just a little bit heavier than the Monologue did. But yeah, check that thing out. Woohoo! I got black because black is cool. You know, once you go black, you never go back. Shows up all kinds of dust and stuff. You know, that's the cool thing about it. Let's see here. The keys. You know, they feel like mini keys. Arturia Keystep is a really small keyboard with keys maybe even slightly bigger than this, and the Arturia Keystep keys feel a little bit better. This feels a little janky, but you know, for a little mini keyboard and the price range for the power of this synth, it's a 4-voice polyphonic analog synthesizer. You can step sequence on it. It's borrowed some of the features from the Monologue with the deep basses and stuff like that, so I'm really excited to see what this can do. But that's it. Yeah. Back panel, we've got some MIDI connections, MIDI in and out. Looks like some CV MIDI in and out, and some CV sync and all that. And then we've got the audio out. Got your power. This is smart. They got a little you connect your power and then you run it through there in case you kick it and maybe you yank it out of the thing or something. But yeah, I thought this one was battery powered. I know the Monologue is battery powered, but it doesn't look like this is battery powered. But whatever, this is super cool. I can't wait to fire it up, and I'm gonna do a quick demo about basic synthesis and how to operate this awesome thing. So yeah, see you in the next section. Hello, this is the Korg Minilogue XD. It's a very powerful 4-voice polyphonic analog synthesizer. I'd rather call it a semi-analog synthesizer because there's 2 VCOs that are analog, a third that is digital, and a digital effects section. So in that case, I sort of consider it to be semi-analog. Nonetheless, it's really awesome. It can operate in polyphonic mode, which can mean you can have up to 4 voices playing at a time. You can play more than 4 voices. You're going to get some voice stealing, but it masks it really well, especially with the digital effects enabled. So the first things first, how do you power it up? And back here you have a power switch, and you just hold it for a second, and it turns it on, and you notice that it says tuning, so you'll want to wait for a little bit. Don't turn it off or anything while it's tuning. It's basically warming up the analog circuit and getting itself ready to play. It just takes about a few seconds to go, and then boom, it's up. Right away you'll notice that it labels the patch name, and then it goes immediately to the oscilloscope. And when you press the button, you'll notice that it has a lovely oscilloscope which shows you what's going on with the waveform, which can be quite useful for editing patches. So once you fire it up, maybe the first thing you'll want to do is play it. And you can just play along and hear each factory sound. It's really lovely. And the way you select programs is you just turn this program knob and just test them out. And you can check out all the programs they have, which are a total of 500 programs, 300 of which are user programs, and 200 of which are factory set from the factory, such as the one you're hearing here. I just kind of made a quick one.
that I really like. It has a lot of bass, and I dig it. So let's go over some of the features of this thing. Right away, I wanted to point out actually that it has a sequencer, 16-step sequencer, which is powerful, and it'll allow you to sequence any one of your patches. Every factory patch that they have comes with a sequence loaded with the patch itself. So you can go through the patches and not only play them, but you can press play here, and then you'll be able to play the sequences that came with the factory patches. It starts to step through the sequences, and you can mess with it. It also has an XY joystick, which is really fun to play with. It allows you in the X position to back and forth adjust the pitch. And in the Y position, it's a user assignable feature. So in this case, it sounds like it's affecting the LFO. We'll show that in a little bit later. You can also select favorites on the sequencer, and you can also store them here on the sequencer. It's really handy because you can access it just by simply holding Shift and pressing a button. And if you wanted to, say, store a favorite, say like I want to store my program into position 2, I'm going to hold Shift, and while holding Shift, I'm going to hold this button down until it says registered to favorite 2. So now when I'm going to hold Shift and go here to 1. I'm on their stored favorite, and I hit Shift 2 and I'm on my patch. Cool. Alright, if you want to play the sequencer, you just hit play, and you can stop it by hitting play again. Now I just want to cover the basics of this synthesizer in each little section. This is geared towards people who maybe don't have a complete understanding of synthesis, and not only want to learn this synth, but want a deeper understanding of what they're looking at when they're looking at the knobs. So the master knob here is obviously the master volume. Tempo here is adjusting the BPM of the patch, which you can see over here. The octave selector, so this is a short keyboard, so the octave selector allows you to basically extend your keyboard. Pressing it back will go lower. And again, this is the XY knob. It's really fun to play. Portamento. What's portamento? So portamento allows you to connect notes to each other so that they glide into each other. So if I'm pressing this note and then I go up here, you'll notice that they're sort of separated in tone. But if I turn portamento up to like half, you hear how it glides along between the notes. Now I'll do it really extreme so you can hear it. Really climbs up there. Voice depth mode. This is going to apply an effect to each one of the sound modes, polyphonic or unison. Play with it and see what you think about it. But this keyboard also allows you to be in unison, which stacks all 4 notes together, which makes a really fat sound, but it effectively makes it a monophonic synth. You have a chord mode, which allows you to play chords on an individual key. And then you have an arpeggiator section, which allows you to play, as you may guess, arpeggiations. Those arpeggiations are adjustable inside the program edit mode. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Alright, like I mentioned before, this is an analog synthesizer, semi-analog, with 2 VCOs, which stands for voltage controlled oscillator. And then we have a third oscillator, which is a digital oscillator, and it allows you to select a user program. Here we're noticing that we don't have any user programs coming from the factory. You have to actually load the user programs yourself. It has a noise generator, and here we'll select the type of filter that affects the noise. So here is a high pass. All of the voices here, the 3 voices, they can be affected in this mixer section here. So I'll turn up the multi oscillator, and now we can hear the noise, and I'll turn to a low pass. We'll hear how that's working. But anyway, you can go through those and check them out. And now we have the VPM. It's the VPM oscillator, which stands for variable phase modulator. It's basically a collection of digital oscillators. So again, we're going to use the type knob to scroll through it. And the sine wave will give you sort of like bell-like tones. And I really like the way they sound. It kind of gives you some nice chimey bell-like tones. As you can see in the mixer section, I've turned down the other oscillator so we can just clearly hear this VPM oscillator. You can hear the different bell tones. Let's turn up some of the other VCOs. You can hear, like I said, the bell overtones. So here's a saw wave, and as you can guess, it sounds like a saw wave. And then we have square wave, which sounds like a square wave, but it's a digital square wave. It might be helpful if I turn off some of these effects here, so we can hear what we're doing a little more clearly. All right. That's a square, saw, the sine waves again. And what's cool is you have these fat waves, which give you a really good bassy sound to beef up your synth. This might be what was borrowed from the Korg Minilogue, which if you haven't checked out the Korg Minilogue, it's really great bass synth. Anyway, then we have the analog VCO section. The VCO1 is along here, VCO2 is along here, and we have 3 waveforms to choose from with each VCO, a saw wave, a triangle wave, and a square wave. And each VCO has an octave selector. So we can, let's turn this down for a second and just turn up VCO2 so we can hear what we're doing. And you can go through these waveforms and see what they sound like. And you can select the octave level of each voice here. Turn up VCO1. We'll go over and we'll make a patch from scratch and we'll cover these more clearly. So moving along, we have the pitch knobs, which allow you to fine-tune the pitch of each octave range for the VCO. And then we have the shape knob, and the shape knob allows you to, imagine when you're seeing the waveform here, it allows you to stretch the waveform out and or compress it, so it's a higher frequency. Fiddle with these. Here we have the cross modulation, which allows you to sort of like affect the power of the ring modulator and the sync. Now when they're up, they're on. When they're down, they're off. Sync allows you to force VCO1 and VCO2 to cross the 0 volt line basically at the same time. So you get some like harmonics added and you get a really nice fat effect. And you turn it off, you get a sort of wacky, distorted, out of tune tone because they're not in sync with each other. You can see how messy that is. And now they're crossing at the same time, so the waveform is much cleaner. Now if you turn the ring up, that allows you to have VCO1 affect VCO2 with a ring modulation and create metallic-like sounds. And like I said, cross modulation depth allows you to affect the amount of the sync or ring modulation. And just like the shape knobs here, for the third oscillator, we also have a shape knob, which it affects the stretching and compressing of the waveform. So here in the mixer section, we have, like I said, the different waveforms that we can mix in and out. And if you ever get lost, just be sure and turn them down and turn up the one that you're working on, and you'll find out where you're at. Okay, and then we have the filter section, which is a low-pass filter. And what a filter does, if you don't know, is it allows you to cut off a section of the sound, the higher in frequencies, because it's passing the low frequencies. But that filter is gonna move basically based off of the cutoff value. And see, I'm allowing some of the high tones to come through by opening up the filter. And it's basically extending it to cover the high notes and pass those as well. But if I turn it down, you begin to lose those low frequencies. Begin to lose those high frequencies. And what resonance does is at the cutoff point, it allows you to amplify or pass more of the tones right at the cutoff level. It allows you to pass more of those frequencies and give a sort of a squelchy sound. Now, when we cut off in a low-pass filter, as you imagine, you can hear that it gets significantly quieter the more you cut off the high frequencies. But what's great about the synthesizer is it has an overdrive distortion circuit. And when it's down, it's off. And you can hear how quiet everything gets, right? And now when I turn up to like what's 50%, it's allowing you to overdrive the circuit by 50%. Now, if we turn it all the way up, we can have the filter quite low, but we can still get some really deep bassy sounds, and we can still hear some of the high end, which is pretty cool. A key track, what that does is that allows you to have the keys basically affect the cutoff level as the higher you go on the notes, so it kind of moves along with the keys, so you don't really lose the higher you go. Now if I turn the key track up, you can get some really good tones higher up on the keyboard. Next we have the amplifier section, and this is going to allow us to further shape the sound. If you had just a tone coming, it would just be a constant tone. But in this case, we have an ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release amplifier. And what that does is it allows us to shape the sound so we can create piano-like sounds or leads or pads or your typical type of synth sounds. So for example, if I wanted to make a piano type sound, right, how are we going to do that? One of the quickest ways to demonstrate that is to turn it all down. A piano has a short attack, which means that once you hit the key, you hear it immediately, a really bright sound right away. And then we have sort of a medium decay off of a piano sound. And we definitely have a little bit of a sustain. Now, when you hold the key down on a piano, it'll still kind of play for a while before it fades off. And then we don't have a huge release. On a piano, usually that's contained by the sustain pedal, which you can also add to this here. Now the sustain here doesn't work exactly like a piano sustain, so you're going to have to fudge it. So that's kind of like a little bit like a piano, right? And it's good for leads, right? Now if I turn the attack quite a bit up and mess with the release, we're going to have a little bit more of a pad type sound with a longer release. Really cool, right? Now, next we have the envelope generator. And what the envelope generator does, it allows you to add another envelope to the pitch of the VCOs. Pitch 2 will only affect the VCO2 pitch, and cutoff will allow you to add an extra envelope for the filter. And the attack decay will sort of let you know, like in the ADSR, when the effect is going to happen. So in this case, the INT knob, the intensity knob, in the middle position does nothing. That's a 0. Now if I turn it up, let me shorten the release. Sometimes when you want to hear something and you're not really understanding how it's working, it might be good to turn off the effects and shorten the attack and release so you can really hear what's happening to the sound. In this case, we might turn it off to just 1 VCO. See, if I turn the attack up, you can hear that it's affecting the cutoff. See how much slower it is when I turn the attack way up? Here it's just instant. Now if I turn the decay down, it just opens for a second and then cuts off. Now, like I said, the middle position does nothing. Now if you turn it in the opposite direction, it basically inverts the envelope generator. Well, not basically, that's what it actually does. Pretty cool sound, right? Down here we have wave selection for the LFO. And the LFO section is its own oscillator, but it's so low frequency that you can't hear it. But what it allows you to do is you can take the LFO and you can affect various parameters and control how those are shaped and converted by the LFO. It's a really great feature. So with that LFO, we're able to select, once again, a saw, a triangle, and a square wave. Now we can select if it's in time with the BPM. Normal would mean that the rate knob affects it. And then one-shot mode means it just occurs once. The LFO just occurs once. And again, we can use it to affect the pitch, the shape of everything, or the cutoff of everything. So let's demonstrate what that looks like. So we're going to go ahead and, I think one of the easiest ways is to try to affect the pitch first of all. So I'll turn the rate knob up to medium, and then I'm going to turn the intensity quite up. And then I'm going to turn this to a triangle wave. So what does that sound like? So if I turn the rate, slow the rate down, right? Now the shape, that's going to take these shape knobs and it's going to stretch them in and out at a variable rate and intensity. Pretty cool. And then cutoff, as you may imagine, is going to affect the filter. And it's quite a dramatic sound. So the LFO basically allows you to give an extra motion to the sound. I believe with shape mode, if we go to edit here and we go to program mode, this is just a really quick sidetrack. When you want to get into the 3 different edit modes, which is program, sequence, and global edit, go into program mode. Here, let me get out of this for a second. To get in there, you hit edit mode. You select them by turning this knob, or you can just continue pressing that button to cycle through them. Now, once we're into this, you notice that these blinking lights are your menu functions, and you're probably like, well, what the heck do these do? But it's really easy. What we're going to do is we're just going to click one, and it'll tell you. In this case, the button allows us to change the bend range of the XY knob. If I keep clicking it, it'll allow me to set the other parameters within that menu function. It'll also allow me, in this case, to mess with the Y parameter. So if you don't know what the Y parameter is doing, you can just click here and you can see that it's assigned to LFO intensity. Range is plus 20%, and the negative is assigned to cutoff. I didn't know that, so I guess... See, that's affecting the cutoff. And this way is the LFO. Oh, pretty cool. So edit mode, program mode. See, this is one. Modulation, micro tuning. Here we go, LFO target. So I was wrong. The pitch here is assignable. And it does affect the pitch of everything in this case, but you can change the destination of the pitch here. So in this case, it's targeting all. So if I want to change that, I can turn it by the program value knob, and now it's just affecting VCO 1 and 2, just VCO 2, just the multi. So we can have the pitch affect basically various oscillators. So instead of all, if I have it affect VCO 2 and exit out of here, turn it up. Now you notice I'm not hearing on everything, I'm just hearing it on VCO 2. So if we wanted to affect everything again, then we would just go back into edit mode, and I think it was the 4th button, yeah, and go back to all, hit exit, and now the pitch is affecting everything. It's a really great LFO. So that covers the LFO section, and then here we have the effects section. The effects section is really easy to use, it's super powerful. First we have modulation effects, then we have reverb effects, and then we have delay effects. And for each of those, you turn them on by simply going to the respective effect and then turning it on. If the switch is already on to off, just flip it up to on. And now reverb is on, and now delay is on. If I want it off, just go off, off, off. Alright, so what's in the modulation effects? Now I have modulation on. How do I select the different modulations? Let's turn on these VCOs so we can just hear one. I'll also turn down the LFO so it's a little bit more clear. Open up the filter a little bit. Alright, so by selecting, we just push up to select. It's ensemble. And the time and depth knobs affect, as you would expect, the parameters of the effect. A flanger. A chorus. Really great. And then back to ensemble. And so now if we turn that off and go to reverb and turn that on, and then select, we have arena. Again, time and depth affect everything. Plate, reverb. A room reverb. An early rough. I don't know what that is. If you know, leave it in the comments below. And then space, this is one of my favorites on here, it's really good. We have a riser, which is gonna take the pitch and sort of rise it up. Like a shimmer. Like a shimmer type reverb. If you turn the depth down, it's not so heavy-handed, which makes it sound a little bit better. Then we have Submarine, which kind of reminds me of the Walrus Audio Fathom guitar pedal. Kind of sounds like you're underwater a little bit. It's a murky and dark sort of reverb. And then a whore, which is pretty interesting. It's another shimmer type reverb, which I think is probably using some detuned octave. And then now we're back to Hall. Cool, we'll turn that off and we'll go to delay. So we have a mono delay. We have a ping pong delay. High pass. I believe that's to pass more of the high frequencies into the delay unit than the low frequencies, so it doesn't get super murky. We have a tape delay, which is really great. It's simulating old tape delays from decades past. Doubling delay. A stereo. And back to mono. And ping pong. So there we go. That's the effects units. Let's see here. We have the edit mode here. And again, you just press the edit button and you can go through the various modes, and you notice that there's menu parameters blinking. If you're curious what they are, just simply click on it and it'll tell you what it is. It's not going to hurt anything to click on it, so if you click through it, it'll show you the parameters within that sub menu. And you can go through and figure out what they are. Exit obviously exits, and shift is to do sub functions. And then lastly, we have the sequencer, which is super cool. As I already showed you, you can sequence and play sequences, but you can also record your sequences. So if I wanted to delete the sequence, one of the ways I could do that is I could literally just click these and turn them off, like this. Or if I had sequences set here, I could basically just press play, record, and hold rest. And as you can see, it's clearing out the sequence. Right? So that's how we clear a sequence. You can also do it in the menu, but it's a little divey, so probably the best way to do it is just either click them off or press play and record and hold rest. Alright, so now we know how to play a sequence, and how do we record one? Well, we could step record it, so we just hit record, and we notice we're on the first note. We can input a chord up to 4 voices, or we can play a single note. once you enter the note, it automatically advances forward. If you want to enter a rest, you just hit rest. Rest, rest, rest. We can also tie notes together too. And when it gets to the end here, it'll complete. The record will turn itself off. So now we have a sequence. Let's hear it. A little bit slow. I have to go into the menu and adjust the step length. We can also affect the motion of the sequence by oh, sorry, I don't know why I just did that. Switch to motion mode. And if you click it, you'll notice it says no motion data. So let's let me just select this one. And this one has motion data on it, as you can see. So if we play this one, you can hear it's doing all kinds of slides and weird stuff, and that's because of the motion mode here. So like, how would we clear out the motion mode? So we can notice that I was able to clear some of the sequence, but with the rest button. But how do we clear the motion mode? Well, we're going to go into edit. I'm going to go into program mode, and I believe it's... Oh, by the way, this is how you change the name of the patch. Okay, I was wrong. It's in sequence edit, as you would expect. So, but wait, let me just exit out for a second and show you something. I'm going to go back to my program. And you notice when I press play, how slow it is. So if you go into program mode, you can go in here and you can change the BPM. You can also change the gate length, and you can change the note divisions. But if you just turn the BPM, it'll speed it up. So in sequence mode, we can also affect the step length. Whoops. Sequence all clear execute. You can actually clear everything, motion data, everything all at once with one button. You can hit right to execute it. Sequence is clear. Here, here's the motion clear. So this is where you go if you want to clear the individual tracks of motion, because you can have up to 4 tracks. But like I said, here you could go in and delete one of the specific tracks. But since we don't have any, we can't do that right now. Motion enable, motion smooth. Okay, so how do we record this motion? Let's get out of here. So let's turn this off really quick. And just entering whatever. Now if we wanted to affect motion, how do we do that? Well, we hit motion enable, play, record. Now, notice how it's recording the motion data right here. And since I turned the resonance knob at the same time as the cutoff, it put that on track 2. We can also adjust the intensity of LFO. And it stops recording basically once it passes through wherever it started. So I might add, if you started the motion sequencer right here, it will still pass through around to where it started, and then it'll stop recording. Alright, so that's just the basics of the whole synthesizer. And just to recap really quickly, we're going to make a sound, but let's just go over this really quickly. You have your master controls, which include octave, tempo, and volume. You have 3 VCOs, which you can affect the wave shape, the pitch, the shape, and you can also add some synchronization and ring modulation. You have a basic mixer, which mixes the different VCOs, a low-pass filter with a drive and a key track feature. We have an ADSR envelope, an envelope generator, which can affect the pitch of everything or user selectable pitches. or pitch to just means VCO2, and cutoff just affects the cutoff. Remember, when it's in the center position, you're not going to hear it affecting anything. You have to turn it either past 50% or below 50% to hear it. And then we have an LFO section, which allows us to further shape the sound. And lastly, we have an effects section, which is really powerful. And that gives us 3 independent effects, which are all acting in unison together. And we also have a sequencer, which is gives us also a favorite select function as well, so we can quick select patterns that we like or save them. And like I said, we can save them by holding shift and holding the one we want to register it to. So we've registered our favorite there. And the sequencer itself, we have basic controls for sequencer, which can control everything from motion to notes. And then we have the XY controller, which is amazing. I love this thing. And allows you to affect the pitch in the X direction, and then in the Y direction you can assign different features to it, as I showed you through the edit menu. So those are the basic features of this thing. If you don't want to watch the sound design portion of this tutorial, you can stop right now. But I just want to say thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and share the love. And here we go, onward to the sound design. All right, here we are with the sound design section of this tutorial. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but this is for those of you who are more interested in synthesis and how it works and learning how to design your own sounds. So as I mentioned, this has 500 programs, 200 of which are from the factory, and 300 of which are user for you to mess with. So how do we access the user programs? Here we are in the factory programs, and as I mentioned before, feel free to go through and play with them, but we just go backward and we see the initialized programs. And what does that sound like? It sounds kind of raw. And that's basically just using a saw wave on one of the VCOs. So we could start completely from scratch with this, which is what I think I want to do in this case. But this synthesizer has a really cool feature called panel load. And what panel load does is, well, it's accessed by holding down shift and holding down play. You hold them down at the same time, and then what it's going to do is going to take all the current knob settings and it's going to load it onto the keyboard. So you're going to get something random, surprising in this case. So notice how it said load panel. Here we go. So one fun thing we can do is we could just start messing with the knobs and really just go random with this and see what happens when we panel load it. You could just find a sound. I don't know, see what this does. Hold shift, and while you're holding it, hold play, and it says load panel. What does this sound like? So if you want really random sounds, just start turning knobs and panel load it. But in this case, I'm just going to go back to an initialized program, and we're going to start directly from scratch. So instead of making like a pad, why don't we make like a fat, bassy kind of lead sound? So I'm going to start with a saw wave on the first VCO. Well, maybe a square wave on the second VCO. The square waves are pretty fat. We'll turn the VCO octaves down. Maybe just on VCO2. And we'll get the pitch in the middle on both of these. We'll force them in sync so I get a nice beefy sound. Turn off the ring modulation. I'll have cross modulation at middle, shape at middle on both of these. Keep it in poly. And let's see, we're going to have, I'm going to turn this down to, oh, whoops, that's noise. I'm going to turn it to the VPM. And we're going to turn it to Fat 2. Too fat. So that already sounds really great. It's something that would be really fast to sequence and get going with a little track or whatever. So if I have the drive low here and turn it up, 50% sounds like this. track won't really affect anything until I start messing with the cutoff. But by turning it up, it'll allow me to let the higher notes register with the cutoff pretty low. Twiddle some knobs, play some keys. Okay, so we've basically just quickly used the VCOs, and we created a bass sound. I'm still in the middle octave range here, and it's sounding pretty good. So we know that affects pitch. But why? Let's have that affect let's have it affect the filter cutoff. So we'll go into edit mode. We'll go into the joystick. Keep clicking on the same one until we get to Y assign, and we want to assign that by turning this knob. And oh, you know what would be really cool is maybe select delay time and see what that does. Well, right now let's just do cutoff. And then click it again, and we'll set the range to be like 40%. And the negative Y is assigned to cutoff, but maybe I'll set it to resonance and see what that sounds like. And that's minus. Oh wow, you can go in the minus range. I didn't even really realize that. So we can go cutoff, turn this to the minus range. Well, actually, I'm going to go positive because I want to be able to open the filter when I press the Y direction. Which means actually I probably have the resonance in the wrong, and the needed to go in a positive direction as well. We'll see what that sounds like. Okay, the resonance isn't really doing anything, so just for fun, let's see what it sounds like when we have it affect the delay. The delay depth, yeah, that's what I want to do. Cool. So let's see what that sounds like really quick. Turn the delay up. I'm going to turn the depth down, we're not really hearing it. So we have no delay. As long as I hold it down, it affects the delay depth. So if we want to go a little bit deeper, we're just going to go through this menu and turn it pretty high. 76%. So this is affecting cutoff in the up position. Really cool. But we have no envelope assigned, so let's turn the attack down since it's a bass. Have the decay fall off really fast. Lower the sustain, and have a moderate sort of release. And then release come down, turn the sustain up. So sustain basically is gonna, what level of volume does it decay to? So if we turn the sustain all the way up, we're gonna get a really full sound. Sustain in this case is basically the level of volume that it falls off to after the decay occurs. So let's have the cutoff also be affected by the envelope generator. And we'll have it go to negative and see what that does. This thing is too much fun. Right on. So that was a basic bass sound that maybe we like it. Cool. We could save it, or what can we have the LFO doing? Why don't we affect the shape here a little bit? Give it sort of like a drifting oscillator sound, like an old 80s synthesizer. You know, they kind of drifted in and out of tune. So we'll set the intensity pretty low and the rate low. And we'll use BPM. Actually, we'll try normal, and then we'll use a triangle wave. So that's just giving it a little bit of motion to the pitch, and it just sort of sounds like those old school 80s synths that drifted around a little bit. The real analog stuff, you know, like it's going in and out of tune. We could also have it affect the cutoff. Pretty crazy. All right, let's reinitialize and let's try to make a kind of an 8-bitty piano sound. Go back to our initialized program. Yeah, it's already sounding cool. I'm gonna try to give it a little bit of noise. You know, pianos don't have noise on them, but you know, 8-bit stuff has a kind of a bit crush sound, so why not? We'll do kind of, yeah, we'll kind of think about like the old school Nintendo here and try to make a little sound for that. More like cuckoo music, right? Like,
Hello, this is Cuckoo.
If you haven't checked out Cuckoo's channel, make sure you check it out. He's the guy that got me back into music after many, many years. He's really great. So unison there was a little too fat for me, so I'm gonna go back to poly. But yeah, check out Cuckoo's channel. He's a great guy, and he's he's truly unique. Cool, I like that. I'm gonna give it a little bit of release. You can really see on the oscilloscope how the shape is being affected. The oscilloscope is really useful. It's fun to look at too. Cool, I like that. I like that a lot actually. So what do we got going on with the piano? We'll have like a medium sustain, a fast decay, a fast attack. There we go. I think the envelope generator is affecting too much sound, so I'm gonna just turn it off. turn the sustain down, you can tell you get some percussive sounds. If we turn up the ring modulator, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But that's how we can start to develop percussive sounds. A little bit softer attack. You can start to get like a Mario vibe. I don't know the song, but starting to hear the notes. So what happens if we make VCO1 a different waveform? I definitely want a little bit of reverb on this, but I'm not going to have it too heavy-handed, so I'll turn these down. Alright, well, that's basically a sound that I like. So let's say I want to save it because I'm stoked about it. So when we're going to save it, we're literally just going to hit write, and it's going to ask you, well, where do you want to write this? I'm going to say, well, I want to write it right here on 500. And it's still called a init program. So what if I wanted to name it something? Be original. I think it's right here. Nope. Here it is, init program. We can change the name of it. And derp. Actually, I don't know how. Whoops. However, do you go forward? Oh, simple. We'll call it Mario. It's a me. There might be an easier way to clear these letters out, but whatever. Here we go. I love it. Hit write. Where to write? 500. Now I have my patch Mario on 500. I love it. I love the way it sounds. So we learned how to write it. Now let's quickly sequence something. So I'm gonna hit record. I'm just gonna play in some notes. Like I said, you could play in chords. So hit rest, rest, rest. Rest. I don't know. Let's just see what it sounds like. Maybe I don't like that, so turn it off. And fuck that guy too. Alright. Maybe I want to record some motion data. Alright, well, there we go. We have a basic sound design tutorial. You learned how to save it. We've learned the basics of how to make a bass sound and a quick little chiptune piano sort of thing. I super hope you enjoyed this. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, share, and if you have comments or feedback, just leave them in the section below. And I really hope to see you in the next one. I'm going to continue to try to improve these and just get better and better. And yeah, see you around.